From the Maddy Institute, the Public Policy Institute for the Valley's 4 public universities, this is the Maddy Report with Executive Director of the Maddy Institute, Mark Keppler.
Welcome. They say that necessity is the mother of invention. In March 2020, the pandemic took hold and government and the private sector basically changed to remote work. The difference, however, is that the government, unlike private employers, is subject to open meeting laws. Can the digital age bring about more open government, or does it pose its own problems? That was the focus of a recent Little Hoover Commission report, and we have the chairman of Little Hoover Commission with us today, Pedro Nava. So welcome back to the Maddy Report, Pedro.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to be a part of this.
Yeah, you're doing a lot of good work, and I do encourage folks to check out the Little Hoover Commission website. There's a lot of things you're doing, but I'm going to focus on this issue in particular today. Can you give our audience a bit of a primer on the state open meeting laws?
Yeah, people probably are familiar with it, the Bagley-Keene. And Bagley-Keene sets out a set of rules for organizations like ours, governmental organizations, how they are to conduct their business. The important part of it is that it be open to the public and the public have an opportunity to participate. And that way they are able to see and hear everything that is going on with the boards and elected groups that are responsible for taking care of them.
Yeah, it seems like a natural part of democracy. To meet the public health challenge, though, COVID had really changed everything. The governor issued an executive order that waived certain provisions of California's open meeting laws. What exactly did that executive order do?
Well, what the executive order did, and it was very important to do for public safety and public health reasons, is it changed some of the requirements under Bagley-Keene. So, for example, you could be involved in remote meetings, but as a member of a board like myself, as you notice the meeting, you have to let people know where you are. So that if I'm not able to attend the meeting in person, I then have to give the time and the location of where I am going to be while the meeting is being conducted. The idea is that the public can then go to that place where I'm located and be available and accessible to the public.
Right. The public official can't hide behind, a closed door, as it were.
Right.
I want to ask you about, the governor's executive order. I mean, getting past the pandemic now, where does the governor's order stand? Is it still in effect?
Well, the governor's order actually sort of morphed into a piece of legislation. Assembly Bill 361 extended the time by which we can continue to conduct meetings remotely until the end of January of 2022. So the legislature has to take a look at what sort of changes they want to make to Bagley-Keene, if they want to make them. Little Hoover recommends that they do, to ensure that the public still can participate and that the business of government can operate effectively.
Yeah, and it's interesting with technology. My guess is they're probably going to have to make some modifications just because it's so ubiquitous these days. Let me ask you this, though. Little Hoover Commission deals with a lot of things. It's an independent oversight agency with all the things confronting the state. I'm just wondering, why did Little Hoover Commission think that this was a particularly important issue to focus on?
Well, because we saw that there were so many government organizations that were taking advantage of the remote meetings. It made for actually more efficient meetings. And what we learned from it was that there was tremendous cost savings, that there was higher level of public participation. There's a number of reasons why it would be important to adopt changes to Bagley-Keene, while at the same time protecting transparency of government operations.
So, you're focusing on, having a state government that's, quote unquote, more directly responsive to the wishes of the people. How'd you go about trying to figure that out as it relates to online meetings?
Well, we did it the way we usually do our reports, which is through very vigorous academic research. And we actually got in touch with 125 boards and commissions to ask how they are dealing with this change because of COVID. So we asked, for example, the Air Resources Board. We talked to the barbering and cosmetology groups that are responsible for licensing.
Well, that's a wide range.
Well, it's important because barbering and cosmetology are some of the probably most personal, intimate exchanges you are going to have. And it's important for those boards to also engage in transparency and be open to the public. So we got a fair amount of information from all of the groups that we contacted and came up with what the information that we needed in order to form some recommendations.
Okay, so up next, we're going to talk a little bit about some of those recommendations. And did the use of Zoom and other virtual platforms result in more or less open government? That conversation in a moment. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. I'm Mark Keppler with the Maddy Institute. We're talking with Pedro Nava, the chair of the Little Hoover Commission, an independent state watchdog agency, about a survey they recently conducted with state agencies about their experience with online meetings. So Pedro, I want to ask you, how many agencies that you surveyed engaged in entirely remote meetings during the pandemic? And then, by the way, did that number surprise you?
Well, it was a very high number, and I think it was reflective of how government agencies wanted to be vigorously engaged with the public. 93% of the folks that we surveyed said that they were involved in these kind of long distance meetings. And interestingly enough, 34% of them had more meetings because they were doing remotely. 66 had no change. So they continue along the same way. But I can look at the Little Hoover Commission and tell you that we almost doubled the number of meetings that we had using remote meeting technology.
That's really interesting. And I guess when you step back and think about it, that does make some sense, right? It's easier to pull these meetings together via Zoom. I mean, one of the things we do, for example, is, as many years ago, we did this show. It was based in Fresno. Then it was moved, and it was hard to get guests, to make that trip to Fresno. Then we did it at the Capitol, but then it's a question of coordinating. And now we're using Zoom, where we're able to get folks able to schedule them. It's a little easier in terms of scheduling. So you can see how meetings of any sort, whether it's programs or commission meetings, a little bit easier to do if you're using online as a technology to do that.
Absolutely.
So I'm just wondering what you think. Did they think that the online meetings resulted in increased attendance by members of the public?
One of the things that Bagley-Keene is so important about Bagley-Keene is public participation. That's the whole notion about it, that we need to be transparent. People have to see what we're doing. And so there was actually a 58% increase in public attendance.
That's very significant.
When the meetings are online, 58% more people participated. So I think that's a clear sign that while there were some earlier problems with the technology and coordinating the meetings and getting stuff to work, we're able to do this, and we're able to do this in a way that makes sense so that people can be more.
It's really interesting because you do see some school boards and councils saying, "Oh, the pandemic's over. We're no longer going to do, Zoom meetings or have that available," which to me sounds counterintuitive if you want transparency and public engagement, particularly given your findings, that's resulting in more public participation when you have this available.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, this is another argument why we have to have better broadband in the state of California, because we are going to continue to expand in all manner of endeavors using the internet. And so it's very, very important that the internet access be available to more people than even it is now. But we find more public participation. Not only that, board and commission members participate more so with remote meetings. There was a 51% greater increase by actual board and commission members when they did remote meetings.
And I think what I read in your report too, it also makes it easier for commission members who are in these outlying areas, a little farther away from, let's say, Sacramento, to participate and maybe even apply for these positions. So, because they can do it online. Now, I want to ask you though about money, the cost of this. Seems like you'd probably save money having meetings this way. What were the findings?
Well, based on our survey, 91% of the respondents told us it was less expensive to do the remote meetings. So there was a small number that said it was more expensive, and that probably was connected to having to acquire the technology and the equipment that you need. But for 91% of the people that we talked to, it was less expensive to meet remotely. So that's taxpayer savings. That means that money is then available for other sorts of work that board or commission is engaged in, and that's a benefit to the public.
In terms of, a lot of times you have witnesses at these hearings. Was it easier to get, I assume it was easier to get witnesses doing it this way and better witnesses?
That's one of the things at Little Hoover that we've also recognized. You can get witnesses from all over the country because they don't have to pay for the airfare. They don't have to pay for the travel. So 23% of the groups that we surveyed told us it was easier to secure the witnesses. That 23% is a significant number by anybody's estimation.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of if we went back in the future, if we went back to pre-pandemic requirements where you have to be, the same physical location, board member, commission members with the public, what was it their feeling? What effect would that have on their decision to hold remote meetings? If that was required, the public had to be there when they were doing this remote, had to be in the same meeting.
I think what we found is that once people figure out how to do it and they saw the benefits, they really liked it. 86% of the folks that we surveyed said that if they had to go back to the old way, they were less likely to meet remotely.
Yeah.
So that's a significant drop.
Yeah. Well, up next, we're going to talk about can a meeting be a public meeting if board and commission members never come face to face with the public? And what are the downsides of conducting public meetings online instead of in person? That conversation in a moment. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. I'm Mark Keppler with the Maddy Institute. We're talking with Pedro Nava, the chair of the state's Little Hoover Commission, an independent state watchdog agency, about the move to online meetings by public agencies and whether it's a good or bad thing for democracy and civic engagement. So Pedro, I want to ask you, there are critics that say you're relying too much on technology. And with all the flaws, we've all been through that over the last year and a half for sure. Is that a legitimate argument that we shouldn't do this because of the glitches that are inherent in technology?
Well, when you think about the use of technology, and if you think it's a problem, then give up your smartphone and see how well you function. What we have found, though, with the use of technology is that more people participate. The public has greater access. More kinds of people participate. So, for example, if you are differently abled, instead of whatever people say handicapped, but if you have different abilities, sometimes it's a real challenge to get to a meeting in a building, in a location. Technology allows for more people to participate. So we think that there is a balance. There's always going to be a balance. It's important that the public watch how government operates. The most important part of it is that people are able to see and hear what is going on so that they can then assess whether or not that body is conducting itself appropriately.
It seems it's just so convenient. You could be listening to using AirPods or whatever, listening to it while you're shopping or doing anything and still staying engaged as a citizen, which is much better than saying I have to take time off to go specifically to a meeting, to a location. It seems like it does make it at least more accessible to folks. But there is an argument that people make that say, you know what, these hearings can't really be legitimate if I can't appear in person in front of a commission. Somehow that has, more of an impact on commission members, or me being able to see a commission member face to face. Somehow I can determine whether or not they're really paying attention to me or whatever. I mean, what is your response to that?
Well, again, we have to change Bagley-Keene, and that'll be the role of the legislature, to public participation and public hearings, do it in a responsible way so that there's a balance. Again, more people, more board members, commissioners participate. That's what our study found. There's actually more engagement by people making the decisions when they can remotely. And keep in mind, this is not going to be a requirement. People move to technology, that the boards go to technology. It will be available for their use. We have members of the Little Hoover Commission who are eager to get back to actual public hearings because they enjoy them and they think there's some value to them. But once again, you have to balance increased public participation, increased board participation, cost savings, and how inclusion of all kinds of folks. For example, you live in a rural area, you're going to drive 6-7 hours to Sacramento to attend a meeting. You're going to be able to express your views and have an impact from your living room sometimes in your own community.
Yeah. I'm just wondering though, it's so fine. So there is a lot of positives about online meetings and Zooming, but we still have the laws out there, open meeting laws. Are they compatible? I mean, can you have both? Or do we have to modify the existing open meeting laws?
Well, I think it's clear from the polling that we took and the people that we talked to that the open meeting laws, as they are structured, is based on a historical model that doesn't necessarily apply anymore. So it can be modified, it can be changed, done in a responsible way by the legislature so that there's a balance of actual sitting in a meeting room with people and being able to use technology for an even better experience.
So there have been some attempts to reform California's open meeting laws. Do you think they address the problem?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, as we learn, 80% of the folks that we talk to say, look, if we can't go to remotely, then we're not going to use it if the laws aren't changed so that it's convenient for our folks. One of the examples that I have is I live 6 hours from Sacramento, so that when we have meetings in Sacramento, I either drive the 6 or I fly. If Bagley Keene were changed so that on occasion I could have the meetings remotely, but I don't have to invite you into my kitchen in order to do it, then I might do that more often.
Yeah, I think that would be a challenge for most public officials if they had to have people in their kitchen because they had to meet face to face. Up next, we're going to talk about some ideas that may be able to incorporate to make open meeting the situation better in line with online video platforms, try to make them more accessible, more transparent to the general public. That conversation in a moment. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. I'm Mark Keppler with the Maddy Institute. We're talking with Pedro Nava, the chair of the state's Little Hoover Commission. It's a non-partisan state agency, a watchdog agency, about the expanded use of new online video platforms that can help make public meetings with boards and commissions more accessible and transparent to the public. So Pedro, I understand from your report that the commission's advocating public access both at a physical location and through the teleconferencing option. My question, would a board or commission member have to be physically present at a specific location that the public could meet that person in person?
Well, what we're proposing is a combination of those two. You want to have the option. So one of the ways to do this is that you have a location available to the public so they can come and watch the meeting that is being conducted remotely. I'll give you an example of that. In Santa Barbara County, the Board of Supervisors can be meeting in downtown Santa Barbara, but in the offices in Santa Maria, some 45, 50 miles away, there is a video link that shows the board meeting being conducted. The public at the Santa Maria location is able to participate. They can watch what's happening and they can offer public comment. So we're already doing that in a manner of speaking. The change would be to Bagley Keene in such a way that not all of the electeds, in that case, have to be in the room. Some of them, depending on their circumstances, could be participating from home, could be participating from an office in a different location. They might be traveling, doing work on behalf of the county, for example, and they could participate from wherever it is they are. The key difference is that Bagley Keene now requires that if I want to participate remotely, I have to tell you where I am, and I have to have the doors open.
I invite you into my kitchen.
I bring you right into my kitchen, right. Or worse, if my desk is in my bedroom, you get to wander around my bedroom, and I don't think anybody wants to do that.
Yeah, that's a problem. I think one of the things that people maybe are concerned about is that somehow maybe a board member, commission member is getting fed information by someone off camera. But the reality is that can even happen in person, right? You can sit at a dais and someone's getting texted by a city council member is getting texted by a developer or a union leader or something. I mean, it can still happen. So, I'm not sure that that's any different in this situation. I want to ask you about online video platforms and whether or not we talked about this a little earlier about the ability to recruit more diverse candidates for like state boards and commissions.
Well, we know that child care falls disproportionately on women. Okay, so more women would be able to participate in public hearings if they were able to do so from a location that was convenient for them. So they could do it from home and still participate in a way that is meaningful. You won't have people with different abilities or disabilities that are hindered in their ability to participate in a public meeting. They've got to travel. It's not convenient. And so we may not necessarily be hearing from members of that community as vigorously as we would if you had remote meetings.
Actually, there was an article a little while ago about the fact how underrepresented the Central Valley is on state boards and commissions. I mean, woefully underrepresented. I think one of the issues is, maybe the ability of folks, even if they'd like to be on a state board or commission or want to apply for a board or state commission, they just can't take the time of driving to Sacramento for a meeting. This technology might really address that problem.
Yeah, when you think about California, you have a large coastal population, and then you have inland, and then you also have rural populations that are, in a way, they're disadvantaged. It's hard to get back and forth from a place that is so far away. So if you live up in Northern California near the Oregon border, you've got a real problem traveling to get to participate. And so you do have an underrepresentation. And I think that there are people that are upset about it. And I think they've got a legitimate reason to be concerned that their voices are not being heard. Remote participation through technology can help address some of that.
We talked about this a little earlier, but I kind of want to reiterate, what do you think the impact's going to be on the ability, if you use this technology, to meet more often in a more timely manner? It sounds to me like the answer is, yeah, this is really going to help in that regard.
Well, I think it will help. And I also think it underscores how important it is for more broadband access across the state of California. Little Hoover has addressed this in one of our reports, and we take a look at, we're Silicon Valley and all that other stuff, but those are very focused on particular parts of the state. There are other parts of the states that are disadvantaged because they don't have the kind of internet connection they should have.
Yeah, we're called the digital divide. And again, same thing. The coast, very connected, inland California, not so much. And I think that there's a lot of attempts by the state and federal government to really address that issue. I want to ask you one last thing. These boards and commissions really rely on expert testimony to help guide the decision making. We touched on this a little earlier. I want to go back to it. Do you think that this is going to help improve the quality of decision making by boards, because it's going to lead to higher quality experts appearing before those boards and commissions?
Well, there's that old saying that came up a long time ago when we first started using computers about garbage in, garbage out. Right. The quality of your decisions is going to be predicated on the nature and the quality of the information you get as a decision maker when you are considering policies that are going to affect people in the state of California. So if you have an opportunity to talk to people that have more experience, a broader range of experience, exposure to a variety of different ideas, things that have been tested and either failed, right, or proven.
Right. You can learn as much from failure as you can from success. We're running up against the hard deadline, but I want to thank Pedro Nava for the Little Hoover Commission for joining us. This is Mark Keppler for the Maddy Report. Thank you for joining us. If you want to stay up to date on state and local politics, you can sign up for our free e-newsletter, the Maddy Daily, by logging on to our website at maddyinstitute.org.